90 people will give you a card for the chiropractor. But if you go, I can't function today because I'm just not functioning, and mentally I'm just so depressed, or I can't put 2 minutes together, I got to go see a psychiatrist. I would imagine that most of the world, it's kind of frowned upon, you know? And unless you have I have a diagnosed disorder now, which I didn't get diagnosed until I was in my 40s, but with OCD and depression, anxiety. But what about just life?
Why? Why did it take that long?
Because I'm old, and there is a stigma from a kid that was born in the 50s and grew up in the 60s and 70s. There is a stigma to mental illness.
Because of the symptoms that I had that were in alignment with bipolar, they were trauma-induced because they've been healed once I got through my trauma. So I couldn't really have bipolar if I no longer have bipolar symptoms. Bipolar is seen as a chemical imbalance, which means it is incurable, unlike a personality disorder or something that is alterable. It is so to be diagnosed as bipolar and then to no longer show symptoms of bipolar with no medication consistently for 2.5 years, which is where I'm at now. There was a little something going on with my psychiatrist diagnosis of me, right?
What I've realized from writing this book about mental health is that humans, we're really not that complicated. We like to think of ourselves as these magical, mysterious things. We're just complicated plants. We need light, we need water, we need oxygen. We're very connected to nature, and our thoughts and feelings and emotions, they don't come from this ephemeral place where we have no control over how we think and feel. They're just brains reacting to signals from our bodies. Anxiety is just our body trying to protect ourselves from a dangerous situation. And yet how it manifests in our modern brains is this weird, terror about a social situation you can't quite put your finger on. But when you break it down and go, hey, wait a minute, mental health isn't this thing that controls my life that I was born with. It's like, actually, we're all just people and machines and bodies and biological things, and we can just do things that change how we think and feel. And for me, as someone that has really just struggled a lot of my life with mental health, thinking I'm just broken, I was built that way, sometimes I just feel bad and there's nothing I can do about it, that's wrong. There's something you can do.
The people who have real mental health problems, right? Bad depression, bad PTSD with panic attacks, right? Or any kind of post-trauma syndrome. PTSD is just one of them, right? So there are people with real mental health problems, right? There are people who aren't alive, right? And the rest of us all have mental health issues, right? I mean, it's complicated to navigate the world, right? It's complicated to go forward with all the things that happen to us, right? And if someone comes in our door and they don't have a post-trauma syndrome, they haven't made changes in their brain, but they've had issues of like this stressor or that stressor, this trauma or that trauma, right? But not big enough to change the brain. Well, guess what? That's worth talking about too. Yeah. Right. I mean, I go to psychotherapy weekly as well and have for years and years. And like sometimes I have something problematic to talk about. But if not, I mean, my goodness, there's enough in my life, right, that it can help me function better. So this idea that like we can all benefit from grounding to ourselves and what's going on inside of us and what are the stressors and what are the decisions that we're making. Absolutely. And then we can shift back and forth between having a problem and having issues, right? So as I wrote about in the book that I wrote, after my brother's suicide, I had real problems. I mean, my brother chose to end his life by suicide, and it deeply impacted myself and my parents. And when I look back, I had no mental health background. I was lucky that I had people around me who were helpful and supportive, right? And helped me get through it. But, my thoughts about myself and whether the world was safe enough and I could go make something of myself in it had really shifted.
Realizing that it's a complicated journey for everyone. Because when I was growing up, I thought like I was the only confused person. I was the only scared person. I was the only insecure person. I was the only person who really was filled with doubts. And then time passes and you realize, oh, everybody is. It's just, unfortunately, we live in a culture where most of us are really good at pretending otherwise.
As we speak, I'm medicated. I'm always in therapy. I've put therapists...
What happens if you weren't on medication?
I don't think I could survive.
What does that look like?
Deep, dark depression, and I don't, have you ever seen like Howard Hughes? He ended up in the fetal position naked, peeing into bottles in his room. But that's not far from where I could be if I was able to even stay alive. you know, and all kidding aside, it's just really hard. Every waking moment is a battle, you know, and is hard to, and I do it by, you talk about living in the moment, but I stay busy. I'm not good with downtime. I'm not good with the voices in my head.
I had the sense that I had bipolar because I ticked all the boxes. I had hypersexuality, hyper spending or hyper frugality. I would swing between impulsively spending to being really, really like, I'm not going to park in a meter and drive around the block 10 times to find I can afford a $2 meter. I don't know why I'm tripping.
I understand that sometimes you're stuck in a cage and like you need things like antidepressants and therapy and things like that, and like to kind of help you break free. But to get to a place where you recognize that you are in control of this and that the mind is kind of like the secondary passenger and you need to retrain it. I mean, it's a lot of times, and I've done a lot of this stuff too with different aspects, not necessarily depression or anxiety, but other aspects of my life, of patterns that would show up. And I end up realizing, holy crap, this is my 6-year-old self.
Yeah, those profound therapy moments. You're like, I'm not that cliche. Damn it, I am that cliche. I'm stuck in that moment from my 5th birthday party. It's a human experience. And this is like, a lot of people, they have this idea that mental health is just for people that have crippling anxiety or people that are like suicidally depressed and they have a medical problem. But mental health is just how you think and feel at any given moment. And it's something that all humans have. So people go, I don't need therapy. I don't need to read a book about mental health because I'm fine. And it's like, yeah, but how stressed are you? How much do you worry in a day? What is your mindset that completely controls your outlook on the world, from how you perform in your career, how you deal with your relationships, and most importantly, on a day-to-day level, how do you talk back to the own voice in your head? Because for me, you know, my experiences in life, I went through a lot of bullying when I was a child. I had a very upsetting time for the first 18 years. It built me to be this very cynical, defensive person. And my first instinct, the first voice that would pop up was always that self-sabotage, self-doubt. And that's not the truth. And what's so important is being able to stop, like look in the reflection of what's really going on and think, is this the truth? Or actually, am I kind of sabotaging myself in this way? And it's something that every single human on earth goes through, but most people go through their entire lives without questioning it.
Yeah.
So much of what goes on with us, like it all goes on inside of us, right? And then we have to live with the experiences that happen inside of us and how they impact us, which is why we need a healthcare system that's actually paying attention to what's going on inside of us, talking to us about it, right? As opposed to seeing all of us the same. I mean, I think, you know, the what we've been talking about so far is like really important, right? Because it's acknowledging the difference across human beings, that, hey, we're not all the same, right? We don't have the same genetic makeup. We don't have the same experiences. We don't react the same way. And if we look at us all the same, right? How are we going to help any of us? And that's also, you know, in writing a book that I wish to be accessible to anyone, right, who chooses to pick it up and read it, and entertaining and engaging, that writes about these things in sort of common, plain language, right? It's so that we can gain an understanding not just of what it is, but of how do we prevent it? I mean, that's ultimately what we wish to do. Or how do we recognize it if it's present? How do we treat it? Because the systems around us, the medical systems and mental health care systems, are doing such a poor job of that.
And where my thoughts go and my rituals and whatever OCD throws my way, then I can be in the deepest, darkest hole mentally that I could possibly be in. So right now, I'm talking to you, and I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know what, you know, I have no control over what happened yesterday. And my whole career has been like that. You know, I didn't plan this career. I had no idea that, you know, 40 years after that dare, I'd be sitting down talking to someone like you about what I did 40 years ago.
Insomnia, grandiosity. I don't know if the grandiosity went away completely. That one's still my ego working on that. But I ticked like 7 out of 9 boxes and was diagnosed with mild hypomania. And what Bessel van der Kolk talks about in that book that you just got, The Body Keeps the Score, is how he's fought for, at that point, over 25 years with the American Psychiatrists Association to have them put in the diagnostic statistics manual, the manual that all psychiatrists have to purchase every 5 years or whatever it is when they update it, to put into that book that trauma is something that people have and that it should be looked at when you're treating people and giving them chemicals and putting them in their bodies. So I'm on both sides of it. I'm both grateful for the mood stabilizer that absolutely, I'm so grateful I was on it when my memories came back, because I did not go into what could have been a really horrific downward spiral due to the instability of the patterns of my brain at that time. Yeah. But then I retrained my brain through all of the healing modalities I began.
I knew something was different. I knew something was wrong. I wasn't taking care of myself like I did before. And I was unhappy and I was depressed. I was not just unhappy. I went from that to depressed, and I was drinking too much. And, I really didn't have a knowledge of like, oh, you think about yourself differently, where you have an internal dialogue that's built around shame now and built around shock. And I needed help then. And there's no shame to that, right? In a sense, right? Like trauma makes us want to feel ashamed so that we hide. That's like, that's against the ultimate in evil, right? That the thing that you need help with creates shame that makes you hide it. Right? But we absolutely need help. If it rises to the point where we're not sleeping well, we're depressed, we can't get it out of our minds, then we need to go and get some help. And when we do, it can change things. Just like, if one hurts one's knee, or, one has a problem in their lungs, or like we go see people to help us. And it's no different. I mean, if you imagine how, if it's okay, I'll give you an example. How after if trauma rises to the level of overwhelming our coping skills, right, then our brain function changes, like we were talking about earlier, right? And we can't just think our way into changing that back, right?
Is this anxiety?
Well, it's more than just anxiety. It can manifest itself as anxiety, but they're automatic things that go on in the brain. So for example, the idea of like, how do we react if we're not on the other side of trauma that's overwhelmed our coping mechanisms? When we see a new person, right, is we look at that person and we look for interest. Like, do you look interested in me? Do you look benign, right? Do you look like you might have something to offer in a conversation, right? We look for other people with a sense of curiosity, right? And interest in them. After trauma, in the way that overwhelms our coping skills, we're different going forward, then we're looking at other people through the lens of vigilance mechanisms, which is really like, do you mean me harm? Right? The thing about that's not the best way to go through life if we're trying to like do the best we can at our job, right? Or people are trying to find someone to have a relationship with, or whatever it may be, or even like meeting a new neighbor. If we automatically say, I see you, I don't know you, and I automatically am thinking, are you trying to harm me? Right? That is so different than the kind of openness, right, that we feel if we're not in that situation. And the idea that, we're just going to think our way out of it, right? It's just like, it's not how that works. No more than if someone has an ACL tear and you think, I'm just going to look at it like this until it fixes itself, right? So if we recognize what's going on inside of us and we look at what's our internal dialogue, right? What are we saying to ourselves, right, as the day goes along, right? What's our life narrative? What do I think of my life? What kind of story would I tell, right? These are the ways that we start to get in touch with what's going on inside of us so that we can again be empowered, right? Like you said, sovereignty, or what sometimes is called agency, of like, look, I'm in charge of myself, right? I'm an adult and I'm in charge of myself in a world that doesn't make that easy.
So my memories came back in August of 2018. By November of 2019, I went off my medication with my doctor. I didn't go back to my psychiatrist because he was already trying to like have me go on something else. The more I told him I was doing well, he was like sure that it was my grandiosity and was trying to put me on different things. I talked to my doctor, who's an actual PhD and has a background in neuroscience and knows the brain very well. So specializing in EMDR, which is specifically a treatment of the brain, right? And she said, let's watch how you do. And that was coming off of the medication, finding modalities that help me that are free and coinciding them with treatment that thankfully I was able to, have insurance pay for. But now, my maintenance is every day I do that work.
Hand on anything else is fine. Yeah. I don't know why.
Oh wait, hand on hand is the problem. Hand on butt is okay.
I have 3 children.
I've
touched things. I've seen things. I've done things.
So do you just wear gloves then?
No.
You need to use your hands for some things.
No, hand on hand. I just, like, after I do that,
Okay.
I don't shake your hand and go, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, I won't shake your hand, but I'll touch anything.
I think we like had a slight quick embrace when you came in, right? I totally forgot that you didn't.
I don't remember, but I would hug you.
Okay.
I would hug you.
Oh yeah, because
There she is. She's flirting again. I think she's flirting again.
Oh man.